Brady Bunch format here.
Brady Bunch.
Yeah, the Brady Bunch. That helps anyway. What's up?
Hello, everyone.
I can move. I
Happy
can, I can move my TV back around where it goes.
Happy July.
Uh,
It's very much July.
yeah, you see this, right? You see my glistening. You see my
That's
glistening forehead.
that's why I came in here. I've been out in the shop, and I was like, enough of this. I'm going where there's at least air conditioning. The funny
Uh,
thing is, it's not that much warmer out there, but there's about a difference from 40 some percent humidity in here, low 40s, to mid 60s out there, and that makes a big difference. So
well, it's cooling down a little bit in here. It got up to like 87 earlier because I was building stove covers. I had the Adam Stack doing bamboo cutting boards, and I had the Acer over here cutting out engraving stove covers. And so with all that exhausting going on, and then I had the CNC over here running. So yeah, it was hot. How are y'all, everybody? Hello, 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 Brian. Hey, Brian made it. I'm glad to see you made it, Brian. Steve's here. Uh, your fellow. Hey, what's with the wearing orange
yeah,
glasses?
where are you going? Where are you
Hey,
going with that?
well, VT, I'll put it to you this way. I wear these things so much, I'm used to them. And so I had lasers running that day as well, so I just wore these. I figure these will stop little flying bits too. So that's what I was after because I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't really trust my assembly of the machine, and I was afraid there'd be like a little twirly spinning knife come flying out of there. Which, by the way, nobody told me those things were so sharp. Jeez, good night. I about cut my finger off of one of them.
Yeah, yeah. I hacked his thing, and so everybody thinks it sends it to my channel. So that's his name's at Vintauri as well.
What? How did that happen? Hang on, let me see if I can
Someone what
change that.
someone wasn't looking at their details.
Well,
It,
yeah, golly, I, uh, and I can't leave now. Hang on, can I turn that off? All right, well, I don't know how that happened. I was in a hurry, guys. I had company. Let's see, participants' names.
there you go. He's just gonna remove them all.
Boom, got them out of here. If you don't know who we are, watch and listen. You'll figure it out. That's how you fix your mistakes right there. That's how you fix it. But yeah, now what happens, guys, is I came in earlier and I set that, but then I had to leave because some of my cameras didn't load, and so when I came back in, Steve was already in here, and so it wound up naming me Steve. But it's fixed now. Nobody knows who we are. Uh, let's see. Who somebody says 108 in Tucson?
I believe it. Probably at like 2% humidity though.
Yeah, but yeah, a lot been going on here at the Clack Shack. Oh, y'all like my somebody saw my CNC table. Check that out. There's a story behind that. And if Klein's in here, he's probably going to be like, "You
Very,
suck." You
like I said, very cute.
hey, that table. I got $100 off on that table because the people at Home Depot are not mechanically inclined and didn't know how to put it together. It's got a crank, so you can like crank it on this side and raise it up and down. And they didn't put the linkage that connects the two sides on there, so when you cranked it, it just kind of did
Nice.
this. So I told him, I was like, look, I want to buy it because it's the only one you got, but this is garbage. It's broke. And so they're like, well, what will you give us? And so I made an offer and they took it.
Nice. Well, you know, their code is if it's tagged with purple, it's like 70% off.
See,
So
look, now it goes up and down now. It goes up and it goes down. So it took me about 10 minutes to get it fixed. I had to take the bottom off of it. But I mounted my shop vac too underneath there because I was going to try to use my sawdust extraction, but with that running for 4 and 5 hours, it was pulling so much air conditioning out of here that I was like, no, I'd rather listen to the shop vac, just put on my headphones, listen to some music, and let it rock. So that's what I'm doing now.
yeah, yep, yeah. Well, in the summer, that's horrible because that shop vac running that long creates some heat. In the winter, it's nice because that shop vac running that long creates some heat.
Yeah, but the running my dust extraction with a 4-inch freaking discharge was sucking the. I mean, it had the cat door, like the cat door was partially open where it was creating vacuum in here, and it was sucking my air conditioning out. But look, guys, look. Yeah, that's right. Steve is not the only one that can do this now.
Now you're going to make me have to crank mine up again.
Hey, I think this is pretty good. This was actually my second attempt, though, guys.
Yeah, that's looking pretty good for a lot
Yeah,
of people they just cut out shapes like just letters. They don't do relief carvings like that. So
yeah.
that's
So,
pretty good. You got some pocketing work there and the outer
yeah,
profile. Yeah.
yeah. Now it's a practice piece.
Now you just need to spend a fortune on various end mills and such, and then you'll be set.
Yeah. Well,
So
I'm going to show y'all. This was attempt. This was attempt number one, guys. And I'm not real sure what happened, like right here, but something bad happened.
here, let me hide this.
I think my feed rate was a little high.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's working out. I did find out that I had to change my dimensions. But yeah, it's pretty nice. Like I said, I was telling you about it earlier. Coincidentally, I found out that in order to be able to utilize all the work area, you've got to actually change it to 428 by 400. So, so I did
Nice.
that, and haven't had any more problems since then. But last night I was out here till about 1:30 this morning, trying to finish that because it would get to this one spot and it would quit. And in Easel, which is what I was using, it doesn't tell you what the alarm is or anything. So I had to wait until I could just download a file and try to run it with the G code sender. And I was actually able to go in and look, double dollar trees and see what the problems were. And it said that it was a soft limit alarm. So I turned the soft limits off, problem solved. Because it
There
does
you go.
have limit, it's got limit switches on all four corners. So no worries there. But
So, question about the replacement lenses, and yeah, so if you don't have the screw-in ring, and it's just kind of siliconed in, that's why we got these two O-rings, and especially for the X Tool 10 and 20 watt, they're two different sizes. So you just drop your replacement lens in the bottom, and then put the O-ring on top of that, snug it up, and then that O-ring will press up against the bottom of your laser module and hold that lens in place, and then it'll be fairly easy to swap out. So you don't need to wrench it on too tight. You just, if the one feels like it's too tight, swap out to the thinner one, and that should keep it in there just fine for you. So other than that, just let me know if you have any other questions on it.
yeah, and I can vouch for the lenses, guys. That's what I'm running on my P20 now, is Steve's lenses. And I did learn a valuable lesson. I had a little bit of a moisture problem in my shop air for a little while there. That's not good for lenses. So if you're on shop air and you find yourself using more lenses than you think you should, check your moisture problems. But I'm running his lenses, and they've been doing fine. So I will tell you, a lot of these new machines that are coming out, the lenses are significantly smaller. So you're gonna have to
Yep.
adjust your cutting size.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that. These are tricky enough to get set up, but yes, like the Ortour has I noticed that one has a smaller lens. So does the Sculpt Fun. So
Two trees.
no two, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
they got to keep everybody on their toes. So
yeah. Because I got that two trees one out. It's about the size of an English pea. It's not big at all. So, but yeah, Brian, I've looked at VCarve, but VCarve won't let you do a whole lot with their trial, and I want to try it before I buy it. So luckily, Easel will let you do some pretty intensive thing, and I've got Fusion 360. I just got to figure out how to set it up. Fusion 360 is a little bit like up here right now. I'm still having to learn uh, building machine profiles and building your toolbox of your bits and all that. I've got to get that all set up. But once I do, I'll be able to use Fusion 360 and then just output it as a G code and use a G code sender. But I'm having to learn that. So I'm just playing with easel in the meantime. I think it was Pawpaw's workshop. I think I watched a couple of his videos, and he uses easel a lot, and he liked it, and said it was simple, and he was right. It's pretty simple. So
Yeah, it's kind of like using XCS for the X tool before you move to Lightburn. It'll
yeah,
do a lot, and then eventually you'll kind of run into a few things that are going to aggravate you, depending on how deep you get into the CNC router rabbit hole. So you can do a lot
yeah.
with it. I know a lot of people that run that extensively, but yeah, I got sucked into VCarve at an early age, and have enjoyed having it. So
Yeah, well, I like some of the features in VCarve, but like I said, I've already got Fusion 360, and I just don't want to go drop another $300 on some software right now. Uh, with between Lightburn, Adobe, and Fusion 360, I'm kind of maxed out my budget for software right now.
yeah, it does add up. So
I saw another question somebody was asking a while ago. Uh, what was it? It was laser related. Oh, there we go. Well, here's my thing, Mark. With me, it was more about not having to have these little motors sitting everywhere running inside the shop when I already have an air compressor that's outside. And just it's just more simple for me to be able to just pop all my enclosures and not have to worry about uh, turning it on, turning it off, and all that. And I get a lot more consistent airflow with them. Now, some of the newer air pumps, and Steve can attest to this, some of the newer ones are a lot more of a steady stream of air than some of the original, like the X Tool one, and some of the other ones that were like a single uh, cylinder pump. They do a lot better, but I still prefer my shop air because I can dial it in and dial it up as high as I want or as low as I want. And like I said, I've got a what 30 something gallon tank of air sitting outside that is regulated. So, and I already had the air compressor, already had air in the shop. So it was an easy migration for me. If you're like Steve and you're in your basement, you know, you might not want to put a big 30-gallon air compressor in there.
well, I don't think you need to go with a 30-gallon per se. I on my bigger laser honestly have run. It's a quiet mode, and it's a 2-gallon the quiet mode air compressor I picked up at Menards, and it'll maintain between 20 and 30 psi running through the system just to the laser with that. So, and we actually had someone just post this in the group this afternoon that they're running California Air Tools. I believe it's the 8-gallon version on their CO2, and they're really liking that. And if mine ever goes out, or if I wanted to run one down here, that definitely would be something I pick up, because you can have a conversation standing next to those things, and they work pretty well. So
Yeah, the airbrush, what is it, airbrush compressors typically are really really quiet.
no, this is like, I mean, this is a full on 8-gallon compressor. Those California Air Tools, they make there's a lot. You can get them at Harbor Freight. You can get them most big box stores. They have these quiet compressors, and they're a lot better than your noisy, stick them outside, insulate them to keep the noise away kind of compressors that are out there. So
Like the one I got.
yeah, I mean, the nice thing with that 30 gallons is it's not turning on quite so often, and you're going to maintain pressure. You get better CFM out of it. But for our need, through the small
Yeah.
airline that we're running on these, if that's primarily what you're running it off of, you can get by with a much smaller one, and it works out really well.
Yeah, that one I bought for air tools, impact wrenches,
Hmm.
sandblasting, and that type of stuff. It wasn't bought for laser engraving. Now, I will be, hopefully, whenever this one dies, I'm going to upgrade it, and I'm going to get me one that has an automatic water extraction built into it so that when it gets water in a tank, it'll automatically, you know, get it out of there. But yeah, I'm waiting on this one to die because I can't justify it until it does. Uh, North Alabama's got a question. and I'm not sure I understand. How do I find the DPI from my lens? I'm missing something there, North Alabama. What are you trying to decide? You trying to figure out uh, the lens sides, or are you trying to set up a file and you're wanting to know what to run the DPI at? Because that's two different things. I think you got your things crossed up a little bit.
Yeah. So on the D1 Pro, the 20 watt and the 10 watt, they all have a fixed focus lens, and so they're when they're in focus, they're going to have a set spot size, and generally those are around 0.08 millimeter on up to 0.12 or so, and some they're not always square, which is kind of annoying as well. So that's going to be what you can kind of gauge what in perfect conditions it should be. If you're trying to figure out how what you should set your DPI or your LPI at, you can run an interval test, and that'll just slowly move these lines further and further apart. And once you start to see a gap, you know that it's no longer overlapping, and that would be your interval to kind of have zero overlap and kind of your maximum there. But generally, when I'm setting them up for photos, I'm going to default to about 300 DPI for most of the diodes as a pretty good baseline of where to be.
Yeah. Beaver Creek, typically, I don't know. I guess you could put it on the other end where the controller sits, but I run mine on the end without the controller. You can actually put one on either end of it. I think I haven't checked it on that machine because I think the controller could be in the way. But a lot of the machines, like especially the X tool, the long X tool, you can actually put one of my jigs on each end of it if you have the extended version, and put panels on both sides. The Atom Stack, a bunch of the other machines, you can do that as long as the controller isn't in the way. Uh, I think Calvin, I guess he's trying to engineer an exhaust system, maybe 1.5 inch holes. It sounds, yeah. Calvin, my advice would be to, if you're going to try to do it for an exhaust system, is to don't go too crazy with the holes because you want to keep positive pressure so that you can create a breeze coming into it. Uh, so, but yeah, that's way beyond my engineering. You got a lot of numbers in that. I'm not good at that. I would just start drilling holes until I get just the right amount of suction. That's that's how I do things. Steve can probably tell you the formula to figure out exactly how many holes you need. I don't know that.
Well, like you said, there's a lot of variables in what you're looking for, because as you said, the more holes you have compared to whatever you're feeding it from. So like if you have a typical shop vac with a 2.5 inch hose, the more holes you put in there, the slower your air is going to start moving through them, versus the fewer holes, it's going to almost pressurize it and add airflow to it to a point. So this kind of goes to my ducted fan model airplane, where you're trying to pressurize the air coming out the pipe behind it a bit, so you choke it down about 10%. But yeah, it really kind of depends on what you're looking to do. But if you get too many of those holes, you're really going to slow down the suction, and it's going to defeat the purpose. So if you feed it by a 6-inch dust collector and a big fan, you got a lot more area to work with, versus a 2.5-inch shop vac setup. So,
Well, I use a little small shop vac, like one of the Walmart El Cheapo, like 1.5 gallon shop vacs for my vacuum table over here, or my vacuum enclosure. And I used 1/2 inch holes in the bed that I had before, and I put maybe like 6 down each side. You'll know when you don't want it whistling. If it's whistling, it's a little too restricted, but you want it just below whistling. I did because this is noisy.
so yeah, when I was designing my enclosure, and I was figuring out the slots on the front, I actually calculated the surface area of those slots versus the 4-inch surface area of the outlet hose to try to make sure that I was in check, to kind of have a positive airflow coming through them. I didn't want too many holes so that it would slow that down. But
Yep.
that's one of the nice things of drawing it up in CAD. You can do that pretty quickly and easily. So
Yeah, no, guys, anything, yeah, you can hear yourself talking. What? That had to be something about the air compressors. Uh,
Yeah,
but,
Bob's the one who he posted that photo in the group. So yeah, he was commenting on you can hear yourself talking over it. So
Bob, yeah, on most of the machines in my shop, if I'm going for the highest LPI that any of these machines are capable of, typically you're going to be around about 315. Because any higher than 315, and you're going to start getting overlap. Any, so it's just at some point it's not helping. So most of the time I'll run 200 to 300 on a photo or something. Because if you're using wood too, wood is not going to accept the LPI as well as like a mirror or painted glass or something like that would. It depends a lot on your medium. And no, Chris, I do it the old fashioned way. I just figure out what works. I know there are formulas, and yes, I'm aware. I can do the basic math and figure out if I got like Steve was saying. I had to write it down, but I can't actually figure out what the surface area of the opening is and all that. But I had to write it down or get a calculator. But yeah,
pi r squared.
yeah. No, pies are round, bro. Cornbread square.
Depends on how you make it.
If you make it right, it's square.
So
When you cut it up in the cast iron pan, you cut it into little squares. If
so
you
yeah, this is getting back to the PVC stuff, and depending on your setup, if you're not in an enclosure, what you might want to look at trying to do is set up more of a downdraft table. And I don't know what you have for your surface, but if you have a honeycomb bed and can build a frame around that, and then have just your inlet at the bottom or your outlet at the bottom of that, that's going to pull most of the air through your honeycomb down into there, and that will actually extract a lot of the smoke. So, and then you can also block off sections of you just take some scrap wood and block off some extra sections of the honeycomb if you're using a smaller spot, and that will help choke down your airflow as well. So, what are we doing? We got a demonstration going on.
Yeah, I was gonna show you. This is my old vacuum table there, and you can see that the honeycomb is even with the surface of the table in most of the places. But the honeycomb sits in here and it comes out. Alright. These little magnets are basically just in here to provide me with a gap underneath the honeycomb so that air can flow underneath the honeycomb, and it goes over to here, and that's where my inlet is for my shop vac. And it's choked down to about a 1/2 inch hole there. So it pulls the smoke down and through that hole right there. And when you turn it on. So that's how that one works. But yeah, that's the vacuum design that I'm running now on mine. And you just put the honeycomb back in there, and the surface of the honeycomb is even with the surface of the bed in there. So there you go. Oh, wrong button. But yeah, that is my design, my latest design, and I like it because it's easy to clean out too. Check this out. Once you clean it, I'm gonna assume that I cleaned this, which I didn't. But so just put my magnets back in there. This slides under my jig, drops down in the hole. I use my fingers to space it so that I got equal space on both sides to let any smoke go down that way. And then you just take the jig is notched so it holds the feet of the atom stack in place. Set it in there, and that guy's not going anywhere. So there you go. Just plug it back up, and we're ready to go to work. It needs cleaning.
So yeah, I guess in short, if you can calculate the area, I would put no more holes than whatever your supply or your exhaust is supporting. Start there, and you can either tape them off or you can drill new ones and do a little experimentation from there and see how it works for you.
Yeah. Yeah, now Beaver, I don't usually put them on the controller end. You can see even with this one over here, I always stay away from the controller because I make my machine park in the back left corner back there after a burn. Oh,
So,
same one.
so Chad, I haven't used one of the JTech ones myself, but the modules themselves are very similar to what you'll see on most of your standalone diode lasers. So as far as using it, your power output's going to be very similar. What you're going to find differently is that the smaller form factor lasers generally can operate a little bit faster than your CNC can move around. So if you're just cutting, you might not see a huge difference other than it's probably a little bit cheaper to get a higher wattage module. Um, but if you're doing engraving, you may see some improvements in speed and flexibility there. So um, other than that, it's really gonna function pretty much the same as what you have on your millwright with that JTech.
Yeah, they didn't send me the. Speaking of lasers for CNCs, they didn't send me the laser attachment, but I can tell you right now, this guy over here can't hold a candle to these lasers as far as speed.
Yeah, and that kind of gets to one of my things is there are times when it's nice to have dual purpose machines, but you're generally giving up some sort of trade off, whether it's difficulty in swapping between modes or it does one thing well but the other one okay. Anytime you can have kind of purpose machines, it's nice. And so that's one thing I appreciate about these diodes is it's easy to have, one of these diodes, and they're small and portable. Even this longer one that I've got, which is one of the larger framed diode lasers, I can move around, I can hang on the wall, I can set to the side, kind of get it out of the way. Um, Whereas a larger CO2 is going to take up a lot of space. It is where it's at, and you gotta fit your stuff in there. They all have their place, but especially for a lot of CNC guys wanting to get into lasers, I could see the attraction of adding one to the CNC machine. But there's a lot of flexibility in having a separate machine as well. So
Well, I'll put it to you this way: if I was reviewing this machine with a laser head on it, and it goes the same speed that it does when it's carving, no, no. I mean, it does good, like you said. It's robust. Most of these machines we have could not handle cutting through the material and carving and stuff like that. But it is slow compared to, especially like that two trees that I just got. Oh my goodness, that thing will give you whiplash trying to watch it. I mean, it is stupidly fast. I mean, the Atom Stack's no slacker, but if you blink, you miss that new two trees moving, and that was
well,
amazing.
and you got to remember too, and as you're finding out, the CNC router, they have to set up its movement to deal with a lot of side forces. The laser's just moving through air. It just has to be able to move that laser head and the gantry around, whereas the CNC router has to support possibly a larger router or spindle. It's got the side forces from the end mill through the material it's going through. It's got to be more robust. So um, generally, it's
Oh
it's
yeah,
not going to be so much as speed as it is for accuracy in those. So
yeah, and I will tell you too. I've learned you cannot move that by hand. The way that the screws are in it, everything you can't move it by hand. You have to use the little
huh,
manual rollers. Like I can grab that thing and push it, and it won't move. You have to take and
it's
turn the little. It's got
yeah,
adjustments on the back like little wheels.
sure,
Uh, but and I know why they did that. They did that to, like you said, counteract some of the side forces from the bit spinning and all that. But
well, and
but yeah, it's
and
very stable.
Yeah, and so it's probably got a pretty shallow pitch on the threads. My
Yeah,
Onefinity, I
see
can
what's.
actually move it by hand.
I mean,
So
you see that, right? The whole thing's moving.
hmm,
It won't move. Even the Z
that's
axis. Even the Z axis. And it's powered off. The steppers are not on.
that's
It's the
uh,
screw. It's those screws.
that's interesting. You sure they're not like binding somehow? Because honestly,
No, no, oh no, watch.
I've never
No.
had a
Well, watch this. Watch it when I turn the little knob. Watch. Up and down. All
hmm,
right, watch this knob. Look at this. Turning the knob with my hand. Look at that.
yeah. It's probably just the way it's set up with the pitch and such. It's hard to do that because, like I said, most of my others, if it's powered down, you can still. I mean, it's tough, but I can move my Onefinity, and that's got some pretty stout, ball screws and rails on it. So
Well, the pitch on these screws is like almost straight up and down. I mean, it is barely at an angle enough to be called a thread.
hmm
But yeah, it's the screws because I mean it slides easy. You can take it on the uh, back side. It's got two knobs you have to turn, and it slides easy. But you're not going to move it by hand if it doesn't want to move. You got to turn those steppers or turn that screw. And I have trust me, because I was having some issues with it. I cleaned it, I lubricated it with some little lithium grease. I've tried dry molly. I've tried everything because I thought I was having a hang up issue, but it was actually a software issue that I was having with with the workspace being improperly set.
so um, so Richard's asking about his setup here. Problem is with odors. I guess two things. So I actually have a large ComGrow enclosure here. I use it a lot for when I need to video test stuff because it gives me a little extra, space in there, and the reflective stuff allows it to work really well. Um, One thing I don't do is even when I'm lasering with it, I leave the bottom door open just a little bit. So I'll leave about 6 to 8 inches of the bottom unzipped to allow airflow in. If you zip that whole thing up, it's actually getting starved of air, and so it's having a harder time moving it out. Um, the other part of it, though, is just inherently through using these lasers, you're going to have some of that vapor and such that's going to get staining your spoil board or your honeycomb bed, whatever you've got below it, and that odor is going to stick around in that as well. So you do need to also clean that, clean your laser, and because that will kind of inherently absorb some of that vapor and material and smoke, and it will linger. So my shop down here does some days kind of have a little more of that smoky smell if I've been running it with the window open and such and haven't cleaned the honeycomb. So a couple things to check on that for you to hopefully help try to eliminate it, but it's hard to completely eliminate it. Now, if it's while it's running, you're getting more odors or you're smelling more smoke, then yeah, you got to double check, make sure that um, you don't have any, like there's not any gaps in your hosing. Um, and another thing to do as you're setting it up, put your fan as close to the outlet as possible. That way you're pulling suction through more of the hose versus putting pressure. If you have your fan right outside your enclosure and you got 10 feet of flexible hose or any sort of joints, then it's got to push that air through. And if there's any pinholes or any gaps or any leaks, it's going to push that smoke out through those versus creating suction to pull it through as well. So anytime you can have your exhaust fan as close to your outlet as possible, that's going to help improve that as well.
I will tell you too, those little foil tubes that everybody wants you to use, those things you may want to check those. And it's kind of like what Brian said too. If you have part of your hose inside your house between the fan and the exit, if there's any little pinholes in that tubing, instead of just losing suction, you're going to actually be expelling the odors. I have one on Enclosure Zilla that was one of those little foil tubes, and it started leaking, and I had some pretty serious odors in here. Matter of fact, I still got a little bit of it I got to fix, but I'm going to be changing it out and going with some of the hose like is typically used for dust extractions. Some of the 4-inch like clear see-through reinforced hose, so that it'll be a little bit more resilient than this little tinfoil hose that all these machines come with.
So This is a good question about that, because if you're dumping the air outside, obviously it's got to replace that air that it's pulling out. And so now my garage, I built it about 15 years ago, and I insulated it. I sheetrocked it, and yeah, it seals up pretty well. I turn on my big exhaust fan for my laser, and you hear the garage doors pull in if I don't have any sort of other inlet. Um, so that can have an effect, but generally that's such a larger volume of room that it's pulling from that it's probably not as pronounced as if your enclosure was fully sealed up and it was trying to suck out of a small 9 cubic foot area or so. Um, so yeah, making sure you have air inlet to replace the exhausting air is going to help make sure that it's moving through. But I would think unless you have a really small garage and it's just super tightly sealed, um, the air is going to find a way to get in around your various door seals. And there's no house is 100% sealed. It'd actually be dangerous if it was. So um, yeah, you could play around with that a little bit, but I would imagine it's not as big of an issue as maybe just double checking the rest of your system.
Yeah, the that's why I added a air intake to this machine because I run it so much that it was dumping all my air conditioning outside. So that's why I've got my little automatic little flap in there that basically opens and lets it pull air from outside once I close this. But if I leave the door open, that little flap it still doesn't seal all the way, but that little flap falls down and kind of limits the amount of air that can go out that hole.
Yeah, I've thought about that, but that's not going to work in January up here. I'm going to be introducing some other problems.
Yeah, you'll be freezing your wood.
Well, the sudden rush of cold air on a laser that's vaporizing material is that could cause some problems. So
Well, I will tell you today while I was doing those stove covers, it got kind of hot in this enclosure because it was pulling the air from outside.
I
Because
bet.
every time I'd open the enclosure, it was just like a heat wave hit me in the face.
Yeah.
But there's enough air flowing through there. Nothing's getting too hot or anything like that.
So Tim's asking, is there any certain types of wood to stay away from because they might have an effect? Definitely, different types of wood will have different odors and issues. But as far as dangerous smells, I use kind of mostly domestics around here that are available to me. But what you do need to watch out for is when you're getting into kind of your manufactured materials, so plywoods, your MDFs, HDFs, things like that, that you might be able to. They're going to have a lot of glues and resins and things like that. Um, or some MDF can have a higher, and plywood can have a higher formaldehyde content, and that's definitely not something you want to be vaporizing too much and inhaling. So, um, kind of like being cautious of certain plastics and other materials that can create bad vapors. If it's not 100% natural, I'd be a little cautious about, just any plywood I throw in there. Um, the the less glue and resin, the better in that case. So trying to stick to your craft or your cabinet grade stuff is going to probably be better than your construction grade. Definitely, I wouldn't do anything that's green treated, um, and certain types of treatments as well. So yeah, Jeff, pressure treated wood, that sometimes has arsenic in there. I mean, you don't want to throw it in a campfire. You don't want to throw it into the laser. So
Yeah, and I will tell you, you'll learn that different woods have different smells when they're burning. A couple of woods that I will tell you, cedar, and it's a great wood to engrave, but I would definitely make sure that you have good ventilation because cedar, sawing it on the sawmill, sanding it or whatever, it is a mild irritant, and it can really booger up your sinuses for a couple of days. There's several species of tree. One around here that I know of that's called it's around here they call it chinaberry, but it has a toxin in it that if you cut it on a sawmill, you have to wear a respirator because it'll actually give you pneumonia because it has some kind of toxin in it that'll damage your lungs. A buddy of mine found that out the hard way. He wound up with double pneumonia after sawing the logs.
yeah. Yeah, Victor, with MDF, there again, try to get a data sheet on it. See if you can find out do they use a lot of formaldehyde in there. I try to find, and there's variations in MDF, and some is going to be more of a hardboard versus an actual medium density fiberboard. If you can find LDF, which is light density, that's going to work a lot better. It's lighter wood, has less resins and glue in it. You can, but like I say, if it has a high formaldehyde content in there, you're going to smell that. It's stickier. The vapor and the residue from it is it's messier. I started out cutting a lot of that on my CO2 before I found a good source at the time I had found a good source for 3 millimeter Baltic birch, and I just switched over to that because it was so much cleaner, so much easier, and didn't smell near as bad. So I personally tend to stay away from it outside of I like using it when testing engraving and doing grids because it is fairly consistent and smooth and even, so you can really kind of see any variations in your line easier. Or if you have an MDF core plywood, it engraves really well where you blast away the thin veneer and put that dark engrave on the MDF layer. It's just when you're getting to cutting it, that's when it gets to be a bugger. So
Yeah. Well, Norbert, technically, you can dry wood inside your house. Now, it'll take a lot longer. But as Steve could probably explain to you, the correlation between temperature and humidity, typically you're going to draw the moisture out at a higher temperature quicker than you would at a lower temperature. My in my kiln, which is not, I don't have it running right now. Now to completely like anything I cut on the mill, if especially if it's a log that's been laying down for a little while, to kill any kind of mold or bacteria or anything that's in the log, you have to heat it up to like 145 degrees for like 6 7 days. But currently in my kiln, it is 115 degrees with 23.4% relative humidity, which is dry. If you go in there, like it'll suck the life out of you in just a few minutes. But you could actually, if you want a little small kiln, if you've got room for it, find somebody who's got one of those big deep freezes that has died. Go get you a little cheap dehumidifier, and drill you a hole in there to where you can run the wire and the drain tube from the dehumidifier outside, and then you got yourself a little small kiln that'll hold little hobby pieces of wood, and you can dry them really quick because those freezers are well insulated and they seal up really nice. A lot of guys that turn wood, I know they use those little mini. They take the mini fridges and turn them into little kilns using a light bulb. They basically just mount a light bulb in there and make their own little kilns for their garages and stuff. So
yeah, if you're in Arizona, basically just move some air through your garage, stack it up, sticker it, and wait about 6 months per inch, and not well known. If you're actually here in Minnesota, 6 months to a year per inch just outside will dry it out, depending on what season you're in. But down there where it's a real dry humidity, that's going to suck the moisture out of the wood a lot faster. So,
yeah.
because yeah, that's what it's more about, is keeping some airflow and pulling the moisture out. So,
Well, Norbert, stack and sticker it at 102 at 22% humidity. It'll actually dry pretty quick, but you're going to
yeah,
have to stack it, sticker it, and weight it, or either weight it or get you some
bandit.
ratchet
Yeah.
straps and ratchet strap it down, because if it's any kind of hardwood, when you start pulling that water out real quick, it's gonna start looking like one of these drill bits for the mill over here.
Yep. Yes, it will.
But yeah, but that'll dry it. Just make sure you sticker it. You don't want to leave moisture in between there. You have, unless you're trying to go for the blackened look or you're trying to form some bacteria. See, a lot of times I'll cut the lumber or either just leave the log laying up there and let bacteria and all do their thing. That way, when I do mill it, it has all these cool colors and it has like little bug holes in it and stuff like that, and it makes for some very interesting pieces. Nothing like spalted poplar.
Spalted poplar, spalted maple. Yeah, there's a lot of people who make some pretty cool stuff out of that. I ended up buying a bundle of. It was a mixture of just straight hard maple and spalted maple from a guy who had overbought some and wanted it out of his garage, and had some fun playing around with that, making some boxes and other things.
I don't have any poplar in here, I don't think. Ugh, I need to get rid of some wood. Oh, wait a minute. This is poplar, but this is actually this is driftwood. I got this guy out of the river. I don't know how long
Nice.
they've been in there. Yeah, made a board out of it. I made 2 river signs out of that board. I picked it up one day while I was out riding. But yeah, having your own sawmill is a benefit when you try to make stuff like this.
See, I just know lots of people with sawmills, so I'm actually going to visit a friend next week. He's having a clearance sale on a lot of his wood. So
I don't know that your neighbors would like you if you had a sawmill.
probably not. Well, in my neighborhood, who knows? I mean, I've got an eclectic neighborhood. People, just kind of do their thing until you really encroach on them. But they'd all just be asking me to cut down their trees. That's what they'd be doing. So
No, they'll be trying to. They'll have like a limb fall in their yard and be like, "Hey, I got some wood if you want to come get it." That happens all the time, and it'd be a limb
oh yeah,
that big.
yeah. I actually have a neighbor a few houses down that does have a small electric sawmill that he can set up in his garage. I don't know what his limit is. I think it's maybe 20-inch max diameter. It's not terribly big, but yeah.
Well, if you've got I think you've got a bandsaw that's big enough, you could take your bandsaw and build you a little sled for it,
Oh, I've done that. Yep.
and
Yep.
you actually could use it as a sawmill.
Yeah. When we had a mulberry tree cut down because I got really tired of the berries dropping on my driveway and my cars and everything else. And it was a little rotted at the base, but I took some of the 8-inch to 10-inch chunks and milled up a few planks out of it. Some really, it's kind of like a poplar where it's got like greens and purples in it and such. So
Yeah. Yep. Like I said, just if you got a good size bandsaw with you'll have enough of an off feed or an in feed table or whatever to be able to do it. But that's actually how I first started before my mill got here. I was using a bandsaw and a table saw to make my lumber, but I was
hmm
limited to stuff like that big.
yeah.
But yeah, well, where's all the laser questions tonight? Is everybody's lasers working so good?
It's either that or all the garages are too hot to work on them.
Yeah. Oh, well, good question there. So far, I I've been doing a few projects. I'm trying to come up with some things that I can make with it. Now, I will say this: making big things with a CNC is a time investment. I have learned that with this one especially. Now, once I upgrade it to the DeWalt, I'm sure I can speed it up a little bit. But I'm having to run 1,000 millimeters per second feed rate, and I'm only doing like a half a millimeter drop, depending on the bit and the design. But it's something pretty neat because I've got it set up out of the way over here so that when I'm in here building stove covers or whatever, I can start something and let it run and then go back and, just go back and take it off after it's over with. So I'm trying to come up with some small things that I can make with it. What I'm really wanting to do is come up with some files that I can have a CNC file and a coinciding laser file so I can engrave it with the CNC and then take it over to the laser, load that file, and actually, engrave parts of it with the laser to give it some color and so forth. That's going to take a little bit of a coordination because I have to either build in like marks on the material to use to line it up in the laser or whatever. But I don't know. Right now I'm just making cool stuff. Like I said, I am really proud of this over here. Well, I got another one I just did. Uh, just finished this one a little while ago. I was just playing around with this. Just practicing my newfound craft. And just made me like a little decorative little thing here. And those letters are actually really, really deep, guys. So,
You need to get some V bits now.
well, the one that's in there is it's like a knife blade. What is it, a 15 degree? I think it is. 6 degree, 15 degree.
Okay.
It's like I'm telling you, it's like a little ninja sword. That thing will cut you. But I made it go too deep. And so by making it go too deep, the way that they taper down, the top a little big. So, but I was just playing around. I had this working while I was working on those 4 stove covers that's piled up over there. Well, that laser's not over there anyway anymore. By the way, my camera's messed up. That was actually an OhmTech 40 watt K40 that a lady's having problems with, and she brought it by today, and I got it working as well as you can get an OhmTech non light burn laser to work, but she left here wanting to upgrade it. I let them play around with my K40 a little bit, and they're like, "What do we got to do to make this one like that?" I'm like, a lot of work, but
Well, Monport sells the board for it. They could start by swapping that out.
yeah, that's what I told them.
Yeah.
To look at getting a board, go ahead and tear that poorly engineered deck out of there, add an adjustable deck, and get a honeycomb and some air assist.
You know,
Because it,
that was what I was originally going to do when I was looking at lasers seven odd years ago, and then I started adding up the time and the upgrades. I was like, well, why don't I just buy the larger one that has 90% of this in it? So, do I do any sales at events? So right now I don't do as much. I used to do a lot with my RC modeling stuff. So I had airplane stands, I had glue caddies, I had airplane jigs. I had a lot of this stuff set up for that. But as the supply chain on Baltic birch has really dried up, and I had to kind of start reworking my files, and also that was a hobby that turned into a job that I wanted to turn back into a hobby, and so I stopped doing that. I've looked at some of the smaller events around here. You know, we've got a maker space that puts them on. We've got a maker group that does some like farmers market type things. And more of what I've been doing or looking to do is actually partnering with some of the people that do that and offer them some things. Because as much as I love getting out there and doing some of those events, I would rather be in the workshop by myself or with other like-minded people figuring out how to do the stuff rather than out there trying to drive sales as much. So I've kind of backed off on that recently. I do more online or through Facebook Marketplace kind of things. But if the right event comes up, yeah, I would set up for it. But it would be something that I'm interested in going to, whether I sell a lot or not, because I just kind of for me it's more about being around the people and such in that realm. So.
oh, I agree. I agree. Like I said, I did pretty good at the Peach Jam. I need to sit down and go through all my stuff, but I've been so busy. Right after Peach Jam, guys, we went to Gatlinburg for vacation because my wife gets the week after Peach Jam off because she has to work so many hours that week. And was in Gatlinburg and actually got spotted by one of our viewers and got picked out of the crowd. So that was cool. I told my wife, never ever would I have dreamed that one day I would be able to go to Gatlinburg or somewhere, and somebody that was from like Virginia or wherever, I don't remember where the guy was from, but would actually pick me out of the crowd and know my name. So that was kind of cool. I didn't get to actually meet up with him because he messaged me after, like we passed on the street. He's like, "Hey, are you in Gatlinburg?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, actually, I'm walking the strip right now." And he's like, "I think I just passed you." So that was pretty neat. But I got to meet at the Peach Jam. The coolest part to me was I had 4 folks that watched the video show up, and I've got their names written down, but I left it in the trailer. I had one from Florida that came up. I had one from Kentucky. A couple came down. Uh, and 2 guys from Birmingham, and then I had another one, but I didn't get where it was from. That actually came to the event and kind of hung out and saw me and all that. But I even converted a Glowforge guy over to a diode, and he was a vendor. He was a vendor there, but he come over to my booth and watched my machine work. And before he left there, he was wanting recommendations of which diode to buy. So that was cool. And I got to meet, like I said, there were several other laser makers that were there, but I stayed so busy. Every time I would walk off to try to go talk to them and get some video, Klein was texting me, "Hey, I need you over here. Somebody wants something engraved." And so I'd have to run back to the booth, and I had like a line of people. The pet tags, I will tell you this, those little anodized pet tags with dogs' names on them and a phone number, like $8 a pop, and they were flying. And the stock is really really cheap on those things. But I was getting eight. They were gladly paying $8. I was actually underpriced them. I should have went for 10.
Yeah, if you're too busy, just up your prices.
Yeah, there's one of them right there, Bob. Bob was there. But yeah, but Bob, you remember the guy that was over there with the dread? I think he had dreads, but he's like stayed. If you watch my video that I did where I do the time lapse of the crowd, you can see this guy keeps coming back, and he was another laser vendor there. He came over there the first time and told me to send in some customers, and then he kept coming back asking questions about diodes and all. And I told him that there were a couple of YouTube channels that were pretty informative. They might want to watch. So maybe he'll subscribe. But yeah, Bob was there. Bob drove down, and I'm pretty sure that's the right Bob. Bob, that is you I'm thinking about, right? From Birmingham. And another guy that I had been emailing for over a year with, helping him get some stuff set up. He was there. I got all the names written down. I forgot to get about the trailer. But it was cool. I wound up making more than my gas money and my entry fee. And that's my goal when I go to these events. I don't want to lose money. You know what I mean? Because it's terrible when you put in all that work and you drive there and set up and spend a whole day out in the sun and you lose money. That's a bad day. But I actually did make a little bit of money, so that was good.
Well, and that's why I always enjoyed it when I was doing the RC airplane stuff. I was going to these events anyway, and I would just drag the trailer. I'd set up a couple tables, put some product out there. I usually had a friend there that could help watch stuff, and I'd go fly a little bit, come back, and talk with people, and that way it made it worthwhile because I wanted to be there anyway. But yeah, if you're stuck at the booth all day and you can't interact with people, you're hopefully you're getting paid for it. So.
Just connected the rotary chuck to the AV35. Any video? Yeah, I've got a couple of videos on the. It's not the V35, it's the P20, but I mean it's the same thing, same process. Pretty much the Atom. If you watch the videos, I think Steve's got a video on the Atom Stack rotary. I do as well. I've got a couple on the Aether, but the way they work, the Atom Stack and the Aether rotaries are identical. Uh, it's like literally the same process. Well, thank you, Bob. I actually worked on making my table look a little less redneck. I was kind of hoping to look a little more official. I made all those little displays and stuff, and it actually did. Like I said, I did well. I go like you said to meet people, but it was fun.
Yeah, Tom, the thing I would recommend is if you've got a scrap tumbler that you can use for just testing, use that, or even just wrap some tape around it, set your power really low so it'll just kind of mark it. You'll kind of get an idea where it's doing so you can at least get it dialed in before you make sure that the sizes are right and that the orientation's right before you start actually messing with more real material, and that'll save you some headache as well. So I addressed some of that in my video on the Atom Stack one. Like Clack said, it's pretty much identical to the Aether, and yeah, just be ready to do a lot of testing. Maybe go buy yourself like a chunk of curtain rod that you can chuck up in there and do some testing on as well. Something cheap just to run through there and get used to it.
Soda cans work well.
Sure.
Yeah, they do. You get you some soda cans and some.
Are those like pop cans or is that something different?
Coke cans. Like the aluminum can.
Coke cans. Can I use Pepsi cans?
Yes, you know what I'm saying. Soda pop. How about that? Does that work for you up there, Mr. Canadian?
Soda pop. What are you out of the 60s now? Here's
you can use that if you got any old. I'm serious. I have played with aluminum cans. I've used monster cans. I have used old paint cans that are empty. Hit them with a little Krylon. Hit them with some white Krylon. Let them dry, and you can have fun. Figure out everything you want to know about running a rotary, and not have to waste a bunch of materials. And because those things are going to get thrown in a recycle bin anyway. So, Yeah, yeah, Bob, I'm getting picked on over here. Steve getting picked on me. Possible customer does wedding parties. Deep engrave with very fine detail. Multiple passes.
So yeah, I mean you'll get diminishing results as far as keeping your detail the deeper you go. I guess I would be asking the customer what he means and why they need a deep engrave versus just a. I would be looking for a fine contrast with fine detail. I'm not going to really care so much if it's
Well,
a 16th or an eighth of inch deep, but maybe they have a reason why they need it deep. I don't know.
well, probably what they're talking about is like I know you guys have seen it. A lot of these folks that engrave stuff, it basically looks like it's painted, and what they're wanting is probably they just want to be able to tell that it's engraved and not just painted on there or stained or
Sure.
sandblasted or whatever. So my recommendation would be to find something that you can get a cheap blank or whatever or a piece of wood that you have laying around, make it look nice, do an engrave with the business logo or whatever on it for them, and just give it to them and go, hey, this is generally what I do. I can go a little deeper if you want, but this is generally what I do. Because a lot of times people tell me I want it to be engraved deep, and then I take it to them. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what happened here?" But they're used to seeing this Hobby Lobby stuff that looks like it was spray painted, and so when they get mine and it actually has ridge details, they're like, "Okay, that's that's different." So yeah, I would try to get more specific to what they want, and like I said, a free piece to look at is always a good thing.
So, and another thing too is I find that the more clear grained solid wood type things are going to have an easier time getting deeper. So, for example, this is cherry wood, and you can see that that's engraved. There's some depth to those numbers. It's not just painted on, and that wasn't hard to do on this cherry wood. Same thing with poplar, basswood, things like that. They take a deeper engrave a lot easier than some of your harder plywoods where you get those layers that can be once you hit that glue layer, sometimes it just slows it down. And if that's just one of those super fine uh, veneer layers instead of a thick one, it's going to be a little more tricky.
Now I haven't washed these yet, but I just burned these today, and that white comes off when you burn it when you wash it. This is bamboo, but as you can see, it's actually like it's engraved. This is not just stained; it's engraved. And they like this better a lot of times. It's a little harder to keep clean if you're actually going to be using it. I recommend they use this side for cutting and this side for display. But I sell a bunch of these. I sold a bunch of these at Peach Jam. But yeah, this if you go to a lot of these places and look at them, it's just going to be discolored. It's not going to have that ridge detail. So I'm thinking that what they mean is they want ridge detail to where you can actually tell when you look at it that it's engraved. It's not just. It doesn't look like somebody put a stencil on here and spray painted it.
Yeah. So my advice there: stick with solid wood versus plywood, and yeah, a little more power, a little less speed, and it should add that depth and hopefully add the dark color too.
And if you've got to sand it anyway, run air assist because air assist will actually make engraves deeper and it makes them blacker because it gets all that soot out of the way, lets it burn better. But you will have to sand it if you run air assist. You'll have to hit it with some sandpaper. Unless it's bamboo, then you can just wash it. I'm telling you, I'm loving these bamboo things. I got to order another box. I have went through over 100 of those things so far since I started doing them like what 4 months ago. I'm fixing to have to order again, and I've been ordering them 48 at a time.
It's good stuff.
Yeah,
So,
3D style image. Boom, boom,
um,
boom, boom, boom.
I haven't done that specifically, although this almost has the effect if I would have done it better. So this is actually an image I did from my Ortour 20 watt, and you almost get a little bit of depth in some of that contrast there, but not quite as some of the purposely made ones. But so yeah, a lot of that just you can get two different effects if you have a thicker material and you set up set this up to where you have some really high contrast areas, you'll actually get some depth to it, as well as tying in the color kind of tricks your eye into seeing that depth as well. So you really like showing that photo, don't you?
I was hoping my camera fixed itself, but it didn't. That's actually supposed to be. But I was going to show you the stove covers because I do those. I dig those down, but I run those at like 120 millimeters a second. In the and it's pine. Everybody says pine doesn't burn. Uh, everybody says you can't get a good burn on pine. You can't get a good burn on pine. But that is pine wood, sanded, no treatment, ain't no borax or nothing else on that. That is air assist with the proper deep LPI and the proper speed. That's what you get on pine. So there you go. I just get tired of people telling me that pine won't engrave, but that's about all I engrave nowadays with for projects. But that's 200 LPI running air assist. Then you do have to lightly sand it afterwards. Is that the bud frog? I don't know. I was wondering about the same question about this frog. There's got to be a story behind Steve's armored up frog wearing jewelry or whatever. I don't know where he got that.
So this is actually just from everybody knows that Imgur or whatever for the processing site. They have a Facebook group and they offer up various files and photos to play around with. And so when I'm feeling lazy and want a photo in the grave, I jump over in that group and find something interesting. So this is kind of a steampunk, futuristic, weird AI generated frog thing. But it had a lot of contrast and details, so I wanted to test that that Ortour 20 watt, at speed and high detail, and what better than a photo like this, and it came out pretty well.
Is that MDF?
Yeah, it's just a thin thing of MDF. Okay. It was from the material pack they sent me to do some testing on, so I figured I should use it. So,
yeah, it looks pretty cool. I mean, leave it to you to pick out the frog wearing jewelry.
It's not jewelry. It's steampunk armor, man. Come on.
Okay, it looks like jewelry.
I mean, guess if that's the kind of jewelry you wear, it's your thing.
No questions asked, huh? Hey, did you see my my latest engrave? Let me find it. What I did with it? Hang on. I did this one especially for you, Steve.
I'm worried.
Oh, I gotta show you. I had it over here. I'm running out of places to put stuff. Check it out. Clack Shack, 1984, baby.
Yeah.
Hey, it turned out really nice. That's the new two trees. Yeah, it done well. It surprised me. This is like the whole gamut I ran on the thing. Check that out. Yeah, that's at 300 millimeters a second.
Okay.
It'll actually leave a mark on wood up to 800 millimeters a second. I was shocked.
Well, let's see. The Ortour 20 watt. This was the power scale at 20,000 millimeters a minute, which is their top advertised speed, and you still faintly get something at 10 and get a respectable dark at 20,000. So you can run it at that speed. If you run it at the normal speeds, you almost burn through the wood.
Yeah, I'm starting to have to use my 30 watt test grid for these machines now.
This was the difference between the 10 watt module and the 20 watt module running the same speed and power settings. So pretty big difference there. So
yeah. Norbert said he graduated in 1984.
I was alive.
Hey, yeah, there's Wayne. Wayne was one of the other guys that showed up from Birmingham. But yeah, Wayne's been, like I said, me and him have been emailing back and forth since I think since I started a YouTube channel. and I never got to actually meet him. But hey, did you do the microprint test where you could write letters down to 1 millimeter font? That's the number one font down at the bottom, and you can actually read it if you zoom in with your phone.
No, but if you watch like my X Tool RA2 video, I did a toothpick, and then I think I did that also with either the Ortour or the Atom Stack rotary. I engraved another real super fine item just for testing, and yeah, it's that's one thing that's impressed me with these diodes over my CO2 is just that really fine point detail you can get with it. So,
Yeah.
still love
Well,
both, but
yeah, and you would think with the power going the way it is that the spot size would get bigger, but this last wave of smaller modules seems to have stepped back to the 10-watt dot size. I know this Two Trees is a 20-watt, but it's a point zero 0.08 by point zero 0.08 dot size. So
so
that's I
oh,
like I like the square beam also as
I
opposed to the rectangular one.
so I'm going to ruin my video for anybody that hasn't watched it. So please go watch it still. But uh, they Ortours with their 20-watt or actually 22-watt module, that they're claiming a point zero 0.08 by point zero 0.08 focus spot size, and it's really hard to actually test that when you get the focus because material in the burn spot it's going to be a little varying. But what I did was a kerf test on it at a few different times, and if it is point zero 0.08 by point zero 0.08, then your kerf in both axes should be the same. But that's not what I found out. There were some variations in the axis in the actual kerf. So I'm not 100% sure that their spot size is square. It's still a real fine point, and I mean, like I said, this frog was done with that detail on a 20-watt laser at a pretty high speed. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure that they're really holding to that point zero 0.08. But that is why some of their cut settings, their cut power is so much better. On this one, this is on 3 millimeter Baltic birch. I was getting almost 800 millimeters a minute, and as you can see, it almost it almost popped through. There's just a couple of nibs. I mean, you could probably push that out. So when you can compress all that power into that finer spot, you're going to get a better cut. So
Oh, hang on. Uh, 8 millimeters a second, clean drops. That machine's pretty sick. I'm going to be honest with you. I almost when I unboxed it, Klein was here, and he can tell you, I was like underwhelmed when I looked at the build, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have they done to me? And then I got to tested it, and I'm like, okay, all right, this works.
yeah, well, I mean, this is same machine, and getting 550. So that's a little bit higher than yours actually.
Yeah, but that's different
Because
wood. That's different wood.
well, right, I'm saying, but it's quarter inch sanded stuff,
Yeah.
and so it's very similar.
The
Yeah,
20 the 20 watts are stepping it up. I mean, all the ones I've seen. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think Ortour and Two Trees are working together. Have you looked at the design of the module that I sent you? Did you see those pictures?
no, I don't know that I saw them, but
Hang on, I'll send you that. I'll send you a picture of the air assist. But yeah, it's amazing to me some of these newer machines. Oh, I like the O'Tour as well, but it well, I said I had a picture of it. Well,
so William is asking a question here, and he's just started using the Chuck style rotary. Image is stretched out quite a bit. Followed that up with, pretty sure he followed the instructions. Do I need to measure how wide it is versus the numbers I put in and figure out what kind of aspect ratio I'm getting versus what I want? So two things that off the bat. Hopefully in the setup they talked about your millimeter per rotation or steps per rotation. You need to make sure that is set up in Lightburn correctly. Otherwise, it's not going to know how far to turn in its calculation. Secondly, you do need to measure the circumference or the diameter, and again, plug that into Lightburn or Laser GRBL, and so it can calculate the ratio for you. If those two things are accurate and correct, your image should be fairly accurate. If you have them in there and it's still skewed, you can run do like a 1 inch square test and figure out, is it longer than 1 inch, is it shorter than 1 inch, and then start adjusting your steps per or millimeter per rotation so that it comes out correctly, and then rerun it and see if your image is skewed. That if once you kind of have a known size and you test it out on that and it's coming out fine, then that should get locked in, and then it's just a matter of making sure you're measuring your diameter or circumference correctly so it can do the calculation for you.
And I'll tell you one more thing, and this I'm a victim of it, and that's why I learned this lesson. Even though you go into the rotary setup and you set up your rotary and you put in the steps per, rotation per millimeter, all that stuff, you put in the diameter of your object, you put everything in there perfectly. If you do not hit that little enable rotary button down at the bottom near the frame, none of that matters. It's going to revert back to its normal steps for the X and Y axis, and it will drive you nuts until you realize that you did not click that little enable rotary button. Guilty. Did that.
And then conversely, when you switch back to working on flat material, if you do not disable enable rotary, you will also be wondering why your things are coming out skewed.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with check the simple thing first before you start doubting your setup, and make sure that you did click that little switch down at the bottom that says enable rotary. And I think you even have to go into your device settings to enable the enable rotary switch to be there, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look and make sure. But I'm pretty sure you have to enable that in the software settings. Yes, no. Yes. You have to make sure that you have it show rotary enable on main menu turned on in Lightburn settings. Because if you don't, there may not even be that switch, may not even be there by the home button. So, I was a victim of that. Okay, he said he thinks he forgot the steps per rotation. Make sure you can flip that switch too. I'm telling you, that'll drive you nuts. Because no matter what you change the numbers to on that rotary setup, it won't make a difference in the burn. So, been there and done that. Let's see.
Yeah, you were mentioning a lot of manufacturers looking like they're working together. I had a question come up on one of my videos for the Whizmaker, and they had asked, "Hey, on the side of the module, does it say something about manufactured by Atom Stack?" Because he's got a similar laser that says something similar, and he was wondering if it was like that. And sure enough, I checked on the label there; it does say, Atom Stack, whatever corporation, Ltd, this, that, and the other thing. So
Atom Stack Shenzhen or whatever. Shenzhen,
yeah,
something.
So yeah, every once in a while you get little hints that they are at least working with their parts. Sometimes maybe directly, maybe not. I don't know, but I would imagine that there's a lot of times there's only 2 or 3, 4 or 5 places that actually make these, even though there's 30 different name brands for them. So
yeah. Well, the one thing that I will tell you, and I'm trying to find a picture. I just realized I did touch on that in my video, so I should have a picture in my editing, I think. No, I didn't. But you know how the air assist on the new Atom Stack has that, it feeds through the middle of the module, and it has that little block built into the bottom of the module, and then the tip just screws out? Yeah, 2 trees. That's the same thing with this TTS 20. It's exactly, looking at the bottom of the module, it looks like you're looking at the Atom Stack. Or not the Atom Stack.
You mean the Auteur?
Yeah, the Auteur. So.
Yeah, well, they also will happily borrow designs from other people.
Yeah.
Whether it's intended or authorized or not. So.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, it works well. It reminded me a lot of the Auteur in the way that it works and the way that it's put together. So.
So you got the 2 trees that you just published a video on that. Was that this morning? Or was that yesterday?
Well, I did the video yesterday and the day before, but it went out this morning.
Yeah, so you got that, and you got your CNC one set up.
Yeah.
What else you working on?
Well, that is it right now because unlike some people who get all the cool toys, the one fiber laser that I've been waiting on didn't show up yet, so I'm still waiting on that. Let me check my email here. Wait a minute. No, nothing. Crickets. So yeah, I think I got stood up on the fiber laser. They sent it to this guy up north in Minnesota or something.
Mm, that's
But right now I am learning this thing. That is my goal, and I've got about 10 more stove covers I've got to make in the next 2 days before I go back to work. So I did like 5 cutting boards today, and partially got 4 cut stove covers done. I've also had to do all my yard maintenance and clean up around here, all that good stuff. But the CNC, what I'm doing is I'm just starting jobs. I'm building jobs, starting jobs, letting them run while I'm doing my other stuff, just to try to learn it because it does take a little while to work. It kind of makes me feel like the days of the 5 watt diode because it's a little slow, and I know that when I put the DWalt router on there, that'll speed things up slightly, but it does take a while for detailed carves. I've learned that.
yeah. Well, you'll learn. Well, sometimes the hard way. What your limits are on the spindle, on the bit, on the machine itself, and yeah, there's a time to it. But you also learn ways to speed it up. So you can throw in a bigger bit to do what's called a clearing pass, and then throw in the smaller bit to do the more detailed pass. And that even though you got a bit change in the middle of that, um, that can drastically reduce the amount of time involved in it. So there's definitely, but yeah, there was a lot of times, when I was doing my airplane stands, that file would run about 35, 40 minutes at a time. And so I'd have the machine running and I'd be doing some other stuff on the table saw or working with the laser and just, monitor it. And then it would switch around to something else. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that is like that. But as Brian mentioned, if you want slow, just get yourself a 3D printer.
Well, now I will say my Clack Shack logo there took like 4 hours. So I started it and I didn't realize how long it was going to take. That's why I was out here in the shop till like 1:30, 2 o'clock this morning because I didn't want to stop it. That and I was having
Yep.
problems with it. It kept like it would get down here in the bottom right corner and it would stop. And it just every time it would stop. I thought it was binding because it when it's making that turn, and so finally after I done disassembled it, greased it, cleaned it, everything else, it was still doing it. I actually raised the bit to make sure that it wasn't the bit binding. So I raised the bit up and set my Z axis like 10 millimeters high, and it still did it. And it took me until today I finally figured out that it was the soft limits were stopping it. So I turned off soft limits because the way that the file was set up in there, it wasn't technically in the middle of the workspace, but you know how the way the location of those things works. But it was once it would get to 402 millimeters from home, it would just kill it, even though it had like 30 millimeters of workspace left. So I had to adjust that. I turned off soft limits, and then once I determined what the actual size was, I updated it and then re-enabled soft limits to protect my limit switches. But
Hmm.
yeah, that about drove me nuts because I thought it was a mechanical problem and it wasn't. It was software the whole time.
Well, you just need a bigger machine, and then you can, you know,
Oh well,
you won't be working towards. You won't be working so close
well,
to your limits.
we won't talk about the other one I got coming, but there is another one that may be coming that it may or may not be a little bit bigger. We don't know yet. We'll see. I want to keep you guessing, Mister. I got a fiber laser and you didn't. All right, Tim. This is
I
a.
haven't been having fun at all. Oh, that doesn't show
Oh,
up very well on there, does it? There we go.
oh, I know. Hey, I ordered some freaking brass challenge coin blanks, and the thing ain't showed up.
Were these?
Yeah, I can't do nothing. It didn't show up. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna let them see my inner
Freaking
Karen.
brass.
I'm gonna I'm
Come
gonna
on, focus. There we go.
yeah, I'm gonna call these guys up and show them my inner Karen because they sent you the machine and didn't send mine. I don't know what happened. It's kind of like that time with the other machine where I got mine and you didn't get yours. But anyway, we'll see.
Oh, you're
But
hoping they're going to upgrade you. I see.
well, maybe they'll be like, "Oh God, we're sorry, but here's the 60 watt to make up for it."
Yeah.
But anyway, Tim, that is a topic of contention at best. Uh, this is my hobby. All right, I'm not trying to like you know just have tons and tons of money off of the projects that I do. However, I don't want to lose money, and I do want to make a little something to reinvest in tools and stuff. Uh, of course, you've always got to have that friends and family discount, and those things will eat you alive because you never know how many friends and family you have that want something made with a laser until they find out you have a laser. So you're gonna have to get through that first, and once you get through that, just figure out how much time it takes for you to do it, and come up with an hourly rate plus your expenses, and of course taxes if it's one of those things where you're reporting. But once you figure all that up, come up with an hourly rate, and just go with that. It's tough, but as long as you can make a little bit of money to buy tools, if you're like me and you enjoy yourself, that's really what I do. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm not trying to, just pile up money from making dog tags or coasters or cutting boards and stuff like that. I have a couple of commercial customers that order from me weekly. I have that stuff priced to the point to where I do make a little bit of money off of that, and that pays the light bill, pays to put air conditioning out here, and all that kind of stuff. Uh, when I do jobs for individuals or when I take stuff to the sales at shows, that's more or less just to try to recoup some of my expenses and make a little pocket money. So, but that's the way I look at it. That's the way I do it. And I know Steve doesn't do events necessarily, but he has sold some of his work, and you
Well,
have to consider
yeah.
that.
And, I looked more at this, especially when I was doing my stuff for the RC hobby, because I would have to kind of, you got to do the math before you start producing something. So I would start with, what are my material costs? And then, you got to add a little bit of wastage in there as well. So, what are my material costs? What are my machine costs? So, what does it actually cost me to operate my machine? Because, especially when I'm talking the CNC router, there's electricity, there's wear and tear on the spindle or the router, there's wear and tear on bits. You got to figure out kind of what does it cost you to run that machine, and then on top of that, I would figure out my time as well. What do I want to get paid to actually proactively make this thing? From there, there's a lot of ancillary things, especially if you're doing mail order stuff. You're going to have shipping supplies. You're going to have maybe, if I had retail stuff, I would actually bag and tag and make them look like, it was a kit. So I had it in a heat sealed bag that had a tag on it that had some instructions and such in there and things like that. So I'd add all that up and figure out what does it cost me to produce this, and then have some sort of retail markup on it on top of there, so that I'm, making money and having a little bit of bandwidth there. From once you've got that number, now you got to see, does the market even support that, or do I need to pull it back from there? Because there were products that I thought were really cool, but when I actually started doing the math on what it cost me to produce it, I would have sure I would have sold things, and on paper it might have felt like I was making money, but in the long run I was actually losing money. So in some areas, in some markets, things sell a lot better than others. So what a stovetop cover goes for Clack down there, up here people would say that's nice, it's firewood for me, and they're not going to pay as much for it. So when it comes down to it, after you kind of figured out your number of what you are comfortable making it for, and that's what it really comes down to it for me, is that, was it worth my time and my cost? Am I okay with that? And will the customer pay for it as well? So once you figure out what it's going to cost you, you got to see if your market that you're selling it is going to bear that.
Oh yeah, you got to learn your market. But see, I have a little bit of an advantage into that at this point. Now, when I first started out, I had one X Tool D1 10-watt machine. And it did not take me long to realize that my revenue per hour was really, really low because I was constantly waiting on a machine. And so common sense tells you the way you have to increase productivity to increase profits. And so I ordered the 20-watt D1 Pro. So then I had two machines running. So whereas before I was making, $30, $40 an hour with running one machine, if I'm waiting on two machines, now I'm making $60 to $80 an hour. If I got three machines, now I'm making $100 to $120 an hour. And just keep adding machines as long as you have the jobs to fund those. The problem is you have to build up the base, and you have to have the demand for it. Today, like I said, today I have made 5 cutting boards, which I sell for $35 a piece, and I'm almost done with the 4 stove covers, which I sell for $100 a piece. And I've got 10 more to make in the next 2 days. So I do have my supply cost for the stove covers is somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 by the time you figure materials, electricity, and all that. So I'm making about $60 off of one. But the bamboo cutting boards, my cost is like $450, and I make 35. So my profit margin is a little higher on those.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, all I know is they buy them. And Klein's actually started making them, and he's already got 2 orders since he put them on his Facebook page. So
So as far as a percentage here, it's going to depend on is it a material that I use in a lot of things that I'm going to probably have more on hand, and it's something I don't need to test too much, then that number is going to be smaller, like maybe 15%. If it's something like a brand new material that I haven't run before and they have a small quantity, then I'm probably going to need a higher percentage to cover because I'm going to have to test that. So if you're all of a sudden, if you're used to doing brand X of tumblers and then someone says, well, I want you to use brand Y in this different color, but they only want you to do 3, well, you're going to need to have at least 1 tumbler, which is going to be 30% markup on your materials, or 130% on your materials, because you're going to need at least 1 to do some testing on. Same thing with if it's a unique kind of wood or something, and it's not something that you readily use, and you have to do some more testing on it. So, it can be a lot higher on those smaller specialty jobs with specialty type material versus, oh yeah, I run 3mm Baltic birch plywood all day, but I know I'm going to have a few pieces that don't make the cut. Then I might factor 15-20% tops on that for overage. So just a lot of these little things you learn along the way because you screwed up and you ate the cost. That's where you start figuring in, I got to add a little bit of buffer just to keep myself solvent.
Well, here's the way I look at it. If my materials, I cut them up into 2. I got 2 different sizes. I've got these smaller ones, which are usually 16 by 16 or so for the one laser, and then I've got my larger ones, which are 35 by 17 and a half. If I cut out of that, you're basically going to buy the whole sheet, which now what I use is $25 a sheet. I get like 19 16 by 16s out of a $25 sheet if I'm using plywood. If I'm using pine, the stove covers, the panel that I make my stove covers with, hang on, I'll show you my scrap. This is the leftovers from my stove covers. This is the panels that I buy. I've got this left. I've got probably 30 of these stacked up in my kiln staying dry, and I'm trying to figure out what I can make out of them and try to recoup some more money, because when I sold the stove cover, it paid for that panel. So that is because I'm not going to charge you for half a panel. I got to buy a whole panel. So I've got this wood left, and I'm thinking signs. I'm thinking door hangers, maybe some decorative little cutting boards. Now that I've got the CNC, These coincidentally are almost the same size as the CNC bed. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what I can make with them to try to pull a little bit more revenue in. So I try to minimize my waste, even if I have to come up with a project to do it. Well, I've thought about that, Brian, but most of the RV ones are actually a little bit deeper than what this is. If it was a little deeper, maybe. But I actually have made them for RVs. Uh, and the sink covers too. And that's a market that I'm thinking with the CNC because I don't know if you're aware of this, but people who have RVs have a sink and they don't have much counter space. And so there's this little thing called a sink insert that you stick down in the sink and it fits the sink, but serves as kind of like added counter space. So I'm thinking maybe CNC these into a sink cover, but I'm having to because you have to have a recess to allow it to, sit in there right. So I'm trying to figure that out. If I can figure out how to build that file and make sure there's a standard size for those sinks, I'm gonna try to convert these because that would be something that I could sell a lot of around here at some of the touristy places like Peach Park, which is I have a display there, which Klein's handling that now, where I sell keychains and refrigerator magnets. But I've sent Klein the files. He buys the materials, he cuts them, puts them together, takes them up there, and he collects that himself because I stay too far behind to keep up with it. But yeah, try to minimize your scrap when you can. But always, like I said, if you can work that into the cost so that the customer basically ends up paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go too overboard with that, but like in your case there, where you have to buy a certain size panel to make them, the rest is just waste no matter what way. Yeah, I would charge the customer for that, but do what you're doing is trying to find another way to recoup some of that versus, if you're buying raw material, well, I need 30 board feet of walnut to do this. I'm going to charge them for 50. Well, after a while, people are going to catch on to that going, well, you're charging me way too much, overage on that wood that you don't necessarily need,
Yeah.
So,
Well, luckily for me, these stove covers are basically on a contract that I started about a year and a half ago with this company. And I actually tried to go up on my price a little bit because wood went up, but I didn't want to push hard. And so I'm not making my profit margin on them is not as good as I'd like. But, I brought another product online and kind of made up a little difference there without having to change what I've been charging them. So that worked out for me. But yeah. Oh, you have to have a minimum of 30 and a half inches by 22 and a half inches. These panels, I think, are 24 by 48 when I buy them. Yeah, well, I've done that, Norbert. I've actually had some folks that ordered like I don't remember how many. It was like 20, basically blank cutouts for a craft class that they were doing. But I usually cut those out of the thin plywood. But there's a use for them. I just hadn't found it yet. But I'm just stacking them in the kiln, keeping them dry until I figure it out. This is pine. This is basically it's pine, but it's what they call a hobby panel. This is several small boards laminated together. Now, we'll tell you this. If you get these things from Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever, stack them, weight them, and let them dry for a while. Because when I first started doing this, I had to eat like 3 stove covers because I went and bought them, and they were inside the Home Depot when I bought them. So I assumed that they were dry, and I assumed incorrectly. And it stood up. It looked like a tricycle. It had like one wheel up in the air. And so I've had to start keeping them in my kiln for a week before I use them. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you could do with them. I'm gonna figure something out. They're the right size to build beehives, and y'all know I got bees, and I actually have a jig for doing dovetails for beehives. So I've thought about using them for beehives as well. But yeah, it's just a edge glued panel. They're $28 at Home Depot. But it's handy. I used to buy the lumber and put it together and glue it and put biscuits in it and all that myself, but that got old. after a while. I realized that my cost was way over what it would be if I just bought these already put together.
I like Norbert's idea. Make trivets with your CNC. You could just do a two-sided thing where it cuts through halfway. You make the channels one way, the other way. That allows for airflow. You could easily do that with the CNC router.
What's a trivet?
It's like a, it's like a, it's like a wooden uh, heat plate kind of thing. So like you
Oh
put
yeah,
like a
yeah.
coaster or something like that, or like the fabric ones. Yeah, no, it's just a wooden thing that's supposed to allow a gap, and it's good to have like the airflow going through it, so it allows so you don't
Yeah.
heat up your nice dining room table or something by putting the hot bowl or whatever on it. So
Yeah, I've made those. I just didn't know what they're called. I made some out of black walnut.
yeah, but I mean you can make those out of pine real easy out of those on the CNC,
Yeah.
and then you could laser engrave something along the edge.
Mm-hmm.
You
At
know,
the Clack shack.
well, or whatever the
Uh,
so
uh, I actually have a video that I did early on. I apologize for the production quality of said video. This was one of my earlier videos. I think it's 5 or 6 feet deep, and the outside is 16 feet long, but the door is 12 foot. It's just big enough to where I can take my tractor, open both doors. I can stack lumber on there, and I can take my tractor with 10-foot lumber. I can go in there, set it down, pull the forks out, and then not have to mess with it. It's not a really, really big building. I kept it small because I didn't want. I don't need a big kiln because that'll eat you alive on power bill. But it'll house 12-foot lumber, but you got to be really careful putting it in there. So, oh, brain teaser right here, Steve.
uh well, I'd obviously get one of each.
Did they make a
um
3-in-1?
I hope not. So for the average person wanting to play around with a laser right now, it'd be really hard to go wrong with like a 20 to 30 watt diode laser. You're going to be able to play with a lot of things, work with a lot of material, and it's not too difficult to learn, set up, or maintain. Once you kind of get into more production work of items that require a lot of cutting, that's where a CO2 of a larger bed size and maybe power, you're going to find some gains on in the fact that it can blast through the material a lot faster and really crank out a lot of same items over and over again. Um, and then if you're wanting to work in metal and you're wanting to do the challenge coin blanks or really do some engraving on a lot of different types of metals without a lot of the hassle of playing around with various paints and marking things, that's where a fiber is going to come into it. But I really see the CO2 and the fiber are a little more specialized as far as you have a purpose to need them. If you're wanting to just do some playing, want something to have some fun with, kind of get your feet wet with it, that's where I think the diode lasers really fit in as kind of a best entry into it. And for a lot of people, uh, that works for them. I mean, just look at Clack with the amount of business he's been able to push through with his multiple lasers. And he started out just buying the one, you know, um, and was quite
and
successful with it.
and actually got in trouble with the wife for buying the one. To the point to where I didn't even tell her I ordered the second one until it showed up.
Well, imagine your wife when the semi truck drops off a crate that you have to wheel into your garage and explain that, oh yeah, it's a laser I bought.
No, that was a sawmill. That was the sawmill. When I pulled up with a trailer loaded with a sawmill, she was like, "So we got a sawmill." Yeah. But now the sawmill paid for itself in the first year. I sold slabs and I sold mantelpieces and paid for it. Oh, so the secret is find a niche, find a way that you can pay for it. Klein's doing the same thing right now. Now he does have the benefit of I have a few extra lasers and he uses them right now. But he just ordered extensions for the LM3. He's running the LM3 with a 20-watt module on it right now, He's my tester because I got my other machines going. And I think he said Tuesday the extensions are going to come in. So we're fixing to take the LM3 that we've upgraded with the 20-watt module, and we're fixing to make it 850 by 400 or 410 or whatever the LM3 is. So, you know, he bought that. He bought him a honeycomb. He's buying all the peripherals and stuff with money that he's making from doing jobs. Now I've been giving him jobs because I got stuff coming in that I can't do. Like with Peach Park, he actually went by there yesterday to fill up the keychains and refrigerator magnets, and the display was empty, so they had actually set it behind the counter because there was nothing on it. It sold out. So he took them 40 keychains yesterday and sold it to them, and was only able to like half fill up the display. So he's got to take them another 40 this week to fill it on up. So, but those are jobs that I've gave him, and then a lot of times I'll give him jobs for small stuff, and people will call him back and say, "Hey, you did this for my friend. Can you do this for me?" Weddings, personalized things, memorabilia for events such as uh, kids being born. Those little things that the ladies put on the door of the hospital room that says the name of the kid, and then they write in how much they weigh and all that. Get your laser out, paint it white, tape it off, put you a little area in there with a nice little border from your laser, and spray that area with that chalkboard paint so they can write the weight and the date and time and all on there, and and then engrave the baby's name. Put a piece of baling string on that thing so they can hang it on that hospital room door, and people will pay crazy amounts of money for that custom stuff. So the custom engraved market is where you want to be for profit. The keychains and stuff like that I do that are cookie cutter, those are okay, but they don't pay as well as the custom. Hey, I want it to say this, and I want it to look like that. That's where the money's at.
Yeah, the trick is just getting your product in front of the people who are going to come to you with those ideas. So, but,
Yep.
uh,
Facebook.
yep, yep. William, yeah, steps per rotation, millimeters per rotation. I'm not sure why they call it millimeters per rotation because it really is steps per rotation in what it's doing. But that is basically the same in what you're trying to adjust. So hopefully that helps you dial in that rotary.
I don't remember what it is, or I'd tell you. Mine's written down somewhere.
Well, and it can vary from machine to machine. So I mean, if you're setting it up,
Well, I think he said he got the Acer
but it's going to
V35.
depend on what machine he's hooking up to. Like if he's hooking it up, yeah, he said it was a V35, and I think it was Acer thing. That's fine, but different controllers send different commands to the steppers, and so it needs to know what it thinks a step moves and such. So that's where you sometimes having to do the calibrations and adjust that number from the stock one. When you get into like mixing, when you're mixing your manufacturers a bit.
Well, I think that's why they went away from steps by rotation per rotation and went to millimeters per rotation. That way, whatever that chuck is, as long as you know what the millimeters per rotation is.
But it depends on the stepper driver that's on the controller. Where you call
Yeah.
it millimeters per rotation or steps per rotation, it's doing the same thing. It's adjusting how much the
Yeah.
controller is telling it to move. So
Yeah. Well, you would think if it was an Acer, the book would tell
yeah,
you what to put in there.
hopefully it should. So I could probably
If
grab my book real quick and look
if
if we
not,
really
if
need
I
to.
was going to say, if not, you're going to have to do some testing. Mine's right here. I think. I think I bookmarked the page. Let's see here. Da-da-da.
So while you're looking for that, Felneck's asking, there's a couple of really established laser engraving companies in the area. How would you suggest you compete with them by being a small operator?
160
Yeah,
is what the book says.
okay.
160 millimeters per rotation, and that's for the Acer chuck.
Yep. Try plugging that in there and see if that helps you out. But yeah, to this question of trying to compete with established laser engraving companies, that's going to be kind of tough. But that's where trying to find a niche, if you can find something that maybe they're not doing, that you can do well and get your stuff out there that way, then people will start coming to you for that, and then understand you can do otherwise. But sometimes it is just build up a small portfolio, have some photos on hand, have some product on hand. Maybe depending on what you're wanting to do, whether it's work directly with customers or try to get connected with some companies, you can either start, find some of your area community Facebook groups, whether it's a neighborhood group or maybe it's a buy sell group. My city actually has a handcrafted made in the area group, and start sharing stuff there, posting there, of things you can do, or things you want to sell. I did that on just Facebook Marketplace with my CNC router, making some Christmas lanterns a couple of years ago. And then when I was kind of done cutting them out, but I had still like 6 or 8 on hand, I just put a picture in my neighborhood group saying, hey, I've been cutting out these for the holiday. I'm kind of done, but I have these for sale, and I'll sell them really cheap to people in the community, because I just, it was easier to meet up with them when they're in my kind of local neighborhood here. And that did pretty well too. And then they start asking, oh, what else can you do? So I wouldn't try to directly compete with what those other companies are already doing. That's going to be hard, especially if they have higher end equipment and can run it faster. That's just going to be a race to the bottom as far as price and your return on it. But
See you in North Alabama. Well, I'm kind of weird because I actually work with the only laser engraving company that's in town, which is CNC Trophy. We're both members of the Merchants Association, and they actually send me work because they have a big CNC machine, and they are busy churning out 100 to 200 items per order. So if somebody comes in wanting a one-off, it's not worth his time to shut down his assembly line to do that one-off. So he'll tell them, "Hey, look, I can't do it. If I do it, it's going to be 6 months. Go talk to Clack." And I get a lot of work off of him because he's got folks ordering, 300 blank name tags or uh, 200 advertising tumblers and stuff like that. He doesn't want to shut that machine down on those jobs to go engrave somebody's cutting board that says happy birthday, mama or whatever. So talk to those guys. They may turn down work that they could send to you if you want to do the work. And I send people to him. People contact me locally and go, "Hey, where can I get black acrylic?" Go to CNC Trophy because he gets a truck in because he orders the stuff in bulk, and he'll sell it to you. And he'll just, he makes a little bit of money off of what it costs him, but you can go up there and get black acrylic and engrave until your heart's content. So don't always think of it being in competition because a lot of times you'll find that you're not going to be able to compete with those guys. If somebody called you and said, "Hey, I need 300 tumblers by Friday," you're not going to be able to do that. And they're at the same time, they're not going to quit doing 300 tumblers to go engrave somebody's, uh, whiskey flask or something for them. So just go talk to them and find out. You never know. All right. What else, guys? If you hadn't already, subscribe. I think everybody in here, I know most of these names, so I don't think there's anybody that doesn't subscribe. But if you hadn't already, go do that because it is getting close to 2 hours runtime, and we don't want to keep everybody up late, even though it is technically. I guess is most people off
well,
tomorrow?
not everybody has tomorrow off, So,
Uh,
I actually took it as a vacation day, so I had an extended weekend. But yeah, my wife's got to go into work, and yeah, if you're subscribed to me but not to Clack, go over, hit his channel up, subscribe, enjoy his content, vice versa, and then hit up our Facebook group as well. We've had a few people mentioning that tonight. It's a good place to share some of what you're going on, ask questions off the week, um, things like that, and yeah, we appreciate all the support. That you know just watching our stuff and leaving comments. Yeah, I was just surprised at how much support that does for channels like ours to continue doing what we're doing. For both of us is not our full-time job. It's a hobby. We enjoy doing it,
hmm.
but it is really nice when it can kind of pay for the stuff. I mean, I got some soldering stuff to work on my LED stuff. I bought these coin blanks, things like that. I'm enjoying and having fun. But if I look at my Amazon order history, it gets a little scary amount of stuff I keep ordering to play around. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely appreciate the support there all around, and enjoy you guys coming and hanging out on the live streams as well.
Yeah, like I said, it does get expensive. A lot of times I try to use my scrap material from jobs for testing and stuff. That's why my testing pieces are usually odd shaped little pieces of wood. I've got a little pile over here where I stick that stuff. But yeah, like Steve said, you have to buy blanks. You have to buy uh, different stuff. I mean, we do get some stuff provided for us to use, and that's great. But it doesn't pay for the light. It doesn't pay the light bill, and it hasn't helped Steve get his air conditioning yet. So, guys, please, everybody, I'm asking, help
Mm.
Steve get his air conditioning. All right, go like, subscribe, follow. If you know anybody that makes air conditioners, tell them Steve will try one out for them. I mean, we're trying to get him an air conditioner. The poor guy can't work in his shop right now.
Oh, I can, but well, like you're doing today, I was sweating it out, and yeah, I was like, forget this. I'm gonna cool off
Yeah.
in the basement. So,
Hey, I'll take 80 something, which it's down to 79 in here now. But I'll take 80 something over 130 like it was last year any day. Because without air conditioning in here, it gets miserable quick. And you can't do anything that you don't want to get sweat on. But yeah. But if you hadn't already, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Brian, there you go, Brian. That's what he needs right there, bro.
well, I have been doing some research on it, and I'm looking at it, and some of it's just also
Oh,
the logistics of preparing the space and making sure everything's in order, so it could happen. But yeah, yeah, definitely a boost in video views would probably help that out.
oh, here, I can hit you up with some of them super thanks. You get some money off of those.
Well, I
You,
like it. I like it when I mean, I appreciate it anytime someone does that, but I always like finding ways that it's the viewers can consume the content and not have to pay for it. You know, it's
oh
kind of the
yeah,
same reason I haven't done a Patreon or anything. Is I would feel like
yeah.
I owed people more, and wanted to make sure they're getting their money worth out of it versus just
Well,
some of the passive ways they can. So
then it's like a job. Who
yeah,
wants to? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have room for another job.
no,
And
no,
if people were paying me for special content, it would be a job. The way it is now, you can come watch it if you want. You don't got to if you don't want to, and it helps. But yeah, I'm the same way. I would feel like I need to get up this morning and do something cool for everybody, and like that would be way too much pressure, and it would take the fun out of it. And like I said, I do this because it's fun. I have it because let's face it, there's a high risk of messing up tumblers doing that. I have done it with tape wrapped tumblers before, and it works. I did a square, and my square actually is wrapped all the way around, and I had it to where the line in the square actually. I did that on tape in one of my videos, but as far as like actually engraving one, I hadn't done one like that yet. How about you, Steve?
no. That's same thing there. That I think if that was something that you could do well, yeah, you could be a bit of a niche player in there, because it does take some time, take some patience on every single graphic and or tumblers, because you add in that slight taper that you might have on one of these, and then that's going to require you to do the calculations to skew your image so the top lines up and the bottom lines up. So yeah, that's where you start earning your money as it getting into more of those specialty things. But people aren't always willing to pay for that, even though it was technically harder. They're just like, okay, it's just an engraving on a tumbler. That's what I want. They don't understand that a 3/4 wrap is a lot easier than a full wrap. So
Yeah, that last quarter, there's a high probability for something to go wrong and cost you a whole tumbler.
yeah,
So and that's another thing you've got to look at when you're doing this stuff. There is a risk involved anytime you burn anything, whether it's a tumbler, a jewelry box, whatever. there's a risk that something could go wrong. Either you forget to do something, or computer hang up, or something like that, and you ruin it. So I try to stay away from those really risky jobs unless it's something I'm doing for myself and I'm willing to take the gamble.
Mm-hmm.
See you, Kai. Have a good night. But yeah, matter. Speaking of which, Windows pushed out some updates and messed up my PC this morning, and or yesterday, and halfway through my Clack Shack logo, my machine just froze, locked down. So I had to restart the machine and start the engrave over after 3 hours of letting it run. And basically, I had to engrave air because I didn't know how to start on the other end and work my way back like I do with lasers.
Well, that's why one of my CNC controllers was so old and had not been on the internet. It was still running uh, maybe even Windows XP. But yeah, I often don't have those connected to the internet, and they're just standalone devices that I'll copy the files over to on a USB drive, or maybe networked. But
Uh
yeah,
oh. Uh oh. Remind me after the live. I need to tell you something I just got. But uh, but yeah. Whew, 2 hours on the dot, guys. If you hadn't liked, follow, subscribe, and hit the thumbs up, like button on this video, because the lives, we don't make a killing off lives, guys. And I actually have to pay, what is it, 30 something dollars a month I'm paying now for 1080p. So yeah, and for y'all to be able to see all the beard greatness, I'm having to pay like $30 a month. So y'all be sure to hit the like button on this video so that we can at least try to get a little traction with it. Maybe some other people will watch it and just kind of step in here. Gillette, I'm sorry, but I can't. This is one of them that me and Steve have been working on something, and we've been back and forth. As y'all know, if you didn't catch it, Steve got a is it 20 watt, right? 20
20
watt
watt.
fiber laser. Me and him both. Me and him both were supposed to be getting these lasers, right? Well, his shipped. He got it. He's like, "Hey, did you get yours?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "It's probably on a truck somewhere." And it's been like a week and a
I
half, and it hadn't showed up yet.
I got the cool glasses with it too.
Yeah, rub it in my face. Just rub it in my face. But anyway, so he gets the cool fiber laser, and I'm just sitting over here, and he's like, "Oh, go, you should be getting a notice any day." I haven't got anything. So, Con Marker, if you're watching, I'm disappointed. I'm royally disappointed. But it looks like there may be a 30 watt fiber laser in my future because I just got a message about it. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it there, Steve.
All right. Well, everyone, it's been fun. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday as it may be. And for those in the U.S., I hope you have a good Independence Day. For those in British colonies and such, I hope you enjoy Treasonous Trader Day. And for the rest of you in the world, I hope you enjoy your Tuesday. But we will catch you again live next Sunday. In the meantime, join the Facebook group, watch our videos that are coming out, and we will see you next time.
Y'all be safe, and I'll try to keep all my fingers learning the CNC. Steve is trying to get me injured with it, but I'm being safety conscious. So y'all have a good one. Appreciate you. Don't forget to hit that button. Smash that button on your way out. Later.
See ya.